Before we begin newspaper analysis and start uh, gathering all the information, etc., let's understand the objective, because every activity that we do should be mapped to an outcome, and we need to understand what is the outcome of reading newspapers. How many of you think newspapers is all about gathering information? It's all about keeping ourselves updated only. Is there any other thing according to you? Because on a daily basis, if you start taking newspapers in previous days, people used to take newspaper cuttings, clippings of them, store them, make a huge bundle, and then feel happy about how much they were doing. Do you really think it's sustainable to gather all that information and reproduce? Is it possible? No, right? Then what is the objective of reading newspapers? Because at the end, in the end, you're not even able to use it. What's the point? But everybody says that we have to read newspapers, and then you go back, you realize that you haven't made any notes, so you go back to magazines and compilations, and then mug it up. Don't you see any contradiction here? Is this a waste of time, reading newspaper? Exactly. Newspapers are not just tools for collecting information, they are like gym equipment. How do you use gym equipment? You train your muscle on them. You use newspapers to train your memory muscle and application of a structured thought process. Okay. You will see hardly around 100, 150 themes. No matter how many years of newspapers you read, there are 100, 150 themes. Okay. Maximum. The challenge is having a proper structure for those 100, 150 themes and pick up the latest information and use that information for writing your mains answers and for arguing and putting forward your point. Okay. Let's take a look at each of the sectors. So I know a lot of you did not have a context of this entire syllabus. You may not understand the entire syllabus pointers, and I'm not going to go very technical right from day one because it will get overwhelming. Whether you're picking polity articles, economy articles, environment, no matter what the subject is, you should know the methodology of learning. We are not learning today, we are learning about the methodology of learning. How many of you watched this movie, Three Idiots? In that movie, he speaks about हम पढ़ाते कैसे हैं, like ఎలా నేర్చుకోవాలి, how do we learn? He talks about he writes that name Farhanization, etc., and then he asks people to check where do you find this in the book. People get into a race, one page after the other, they search frantically, and then they realize they have not found it because it doesn't exist. So even before you begin preparing for this exam, you need to know why you are preparing. Can you tell me what is the objective of expecting a candidate to know about current affairs? Why are IAS officers expected to know? Potential IAS officers expected to know about the current affairs? Did you ever wonder? Why should we know? Why should we know history? Why should we know economy, environment, so many subjects? Why? Because after all, this is a general studies paper. You're not an environmentalist. You're not an economist. And yet, we are expected to know something about it. Why? Okay, the answer is you are expected to know basic. I did not ask what is the subject. I'm asking the logic behind expecting us, the rationale, the justification. Why should we know? Great. You are all problem solvers, policy makers. In the initial years of your in your career, when you're working at the ground level, you need not have practical level policy making, but you at least need to have the ability to judge what is the problem. If you don't even understand the problem statement, what solution can we give? Isn't it? You're all problem solvers in the making. What UPSC is expecting from you is not knowledge. In this world of Google, I keep saying the same thing. Google is feeling insecure today because ChatGPT came into existence. We are mere mortals. Do you really think you can outcompete an AI? Can you be better than ChatGPT in your entire life? Then what are we trying to do here in this exam? How is a human being better than an AI? Exactly. How are we different from an AI? Decision making. If you can't take decisions, what are we here for? How will you take those decisions? On what basis are you taking that decision? It's not arbitrary. You can't take a decision just like you want, as you wish. You need to have a certain methodology, right? What is that methodology? What is the end objective? How many of you read NCRTs, polity NCRTs? Do you have at least an orientation of the basics of polity? Can anyone tell me what is the preamble? It's the philosophy of the Constitution. What does the philosophy talk about? Great. It is okay. Now, from polity, let's take a step back. We'll go back to English grammar of our school. What is a noun? Noun is a name, or let's say in a name. What is an adjective? Which describes something. Can you tell me the adjectives and preamble? Great. Sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic, republic. All of this describe a noun called India. The attributes of a country, which are the adjectives, describe the nature of the noun called India. And what is India? We, the people. So, when you're representing a country, you're representing its value system. That value system is given in the preamble. And that preamble together constitutes the values and the philosophical systems that the people of this country and its representatives are expected to follow. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic in that very specific order. Why sovereign? Why sovereign is the first thing. What is the first description? In the order of the words given in the preamble, why sovereign is the first one? Why is it the first one? I did not ask what. I know you can find the what in the textbooks, but the why is what sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. Exactly. You might be a democratic republic. You might be a socialist country. But if that decisions are contingent on someone's else approval, you're no longer free. A country becomes an independent nation only when it has its control. And that control is captured in the adjective of sovereignty. Right. So when you're given so much freedom, you also need to have certain sense of responsibility. So for every right, there is a corresponding duty. Right? Between an individual, between an individual and the state, what is the relation? See, this is an orientation class for how to read. We'll cover all the subjects basically and then come back. Between an individual and the state, what is the relation? Okay. The relation is captured through the idea of citizen, citizenship. Okay. What do you mean by citizenship? Can you be a bit louder? Moral, political, and national. Great. Moral. What is the moral identity that this country gives us? Okay. In its simplest form, it is what is right and what is wrong. What is right for India? See, it is okay to be wrong. You're all grown ups, adults. And I'll tell you something. If you want to succeed in this exam, the first rule is do not be embarrassed with making mistakes. You are bound to see failures on a daily basis. If you look at it as a failure, I'm calling it a failure because that is how the society has taught us on a daily basis. If you aim for something and you don't succeed it today, right now, you are considered a failure. That's not how it works. Look at it as an opportunity to learn on a daily basis. And the faster you fail, the faster you get to learn. Do not be scared that, people will look at me in a bad light if I make a mistake. That's a very undesirable attribute. So I want your participation. Tell wrong answers, tell terrible answers, but try. If you don't try, you are not going to grow. So I want your participation. So tell me, what are the moral values that this country taught us? Think. Any generic answer. I'm not expecting answers from Polity, Lakshmikant, or any NCRTs. I'm expecting answers from your common sense. Public order. Great. Environment. Sorry? To abide by the Constitution. Why should we abide by the Constitution? To come out of anarchy. Good. What is anarchy? Lawlessness. Why should we have law? For coordination and cooperation. What will happen if there is no coordination and cooperation? It leads to chaos. There is no peace in society. So, can I safely say, the end objective of the Constitution is to ensure peace, order, and happiness in a society? Overall, can we say that is the moral philosophy that this Constitution tries to achieve? To keep everyone happy, in a very simplistic word. So, if a 10-year-old asks, why do we have Constitution? To make sure everyone is happy. Now, as the kid grows up, he'll understand that it's very difficult to keep everyone happy. And as a 15-year-old, he'll come back and ask, hey, I thought you said Constitution is to ensure that everyone is happy. But I'm not happy today because I want a state first rank. Because my parents told me that if you clear the 10th class exam, your life is going to be settled. And I want a state first rank and I don't want to study. I am demanding that the Constitution should give me an answer. Great. Constitution ensures just an opportunity. It just ensures an opportunity. It doesn't give you a right to get state first. It gives you the entitlement or the opportunity. You are guaranteed an opportunity. You're not guaranteed a result. The poor kid thought if you score state first in 10th class, the maximum he can get is a free seat in his intermediate. Who wants to get tortured for free of cost? At least it's better than paying for it, right? And the kid enters into the intermediate or 11th and 12th class and then realizes that, okay, now I think, now that we're done with the 10th class, only one more step. Get into MBBS, law, engineering. Okay, I'm in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, so I'll have to say we have to get into engineering. So, and then decide what we like. We'll figure out. How many of you are non-engineers? Okay, now I sense a generation gap. So, probably in the last 10 years, situations have changed. People are now exploring more opportunities, quote unquote. Why? Because they've taken some informed decisions. The mistakes that or lack of awareness of the previous generation, thanks to the internet revolution, gave more and more information to the next generation. And see, these days, you guys are coming prepared to the class of polity and talking about terms like constitution, etc., etc. But many years ago, like probably a decade ago, when we were seated in the class, we used to wonder, what is a constitution? Why are we even... Nobody asked why. The first question everyone asked was, what textbook should we read? Which material will give us rank? The questions are still relevant. But before that, you should understand the why, because like I told you, if you just rely on information to clear this exam, just a heads up, you're in for a huge disappointment. Information alone, mugging up information alone is no longer the tool for success in this exam. Okay, you might be wondering, I thought this is a newspaper class. Why am I getting an orientation of the civil services exam again? It's important because when you start reading a news, you need to know the end objective. The end objective of reading newspapers is to behave like a decision maker. And that decisions should be taken within a framework. And that framework is already given to us by the Indian Constitution. Why should we only consider Indian Constitution? Can anyone tell me? A common sense answer. Because you're living in India and you're applying for Indian government job. What is UPSC doing here? How many of you actually sat for any job interviews? Did you ever try, or at least you know how job interviews work, right? You have a job posting on any portal like Naukri.com, LinkedIn, etc., etc. Then you click apply. You'll send your biodata. There will be an interview, some test, some interview, and then you'll get a job. Exactly what UPSC is doing. You apply. There is a notification. You apply. You write the exam. You sit for the interview. If you pass the interview, you'll get a job. Essentially, UPSC is a HR agency. Isn't it? It's a recruiting agency. If you look at it that way, it's like Naukri.com for the government jobs. But what is so... why is this so glorified? Because the kind of challenges that this job requires you to handle efficiently is so difficult because of the diversity of this country, not because of the nature of the job. The biggest challenge is understanding that you are dealing with human beings, where emotions dominate logic most of the times. We are not 100% rational people all the time. Even the most brilliant minds have a room for emotions, and that is what makes us human. So whatever decisions you take should be pragmatic within the framework of the Constitution. Understand the psyche of the target audience. So many layers are there. If it is so simple that, if it is not raining today, let's take up cloud seeding, and then it will automatically rain in a desert. We have water. If it's that simple, would have been nice. Unfortunately, it's not, because Earth itself is a system. If you touch something, something else will happen. We are going to be a part of a system, and I want you to incorporate that systemic thinking. What do you mean by systemic thinking? If you touch something, it will have repercussions, ripple effect. How many of you watched this movie Dasavtaram? Many of you. Kamal Hassan's Dasavtaram. In that movie, he talks about something called a butterfly effect. Remember? The theory says that when a butterfly flies, it will change the frequency of that region, which will have a ripple effect in multiple places. The nature of environment is such that you take a decision and disturb its balance, it will have repercussions everywhere. 2018 movie. Anyone watched it? Kerala. 2018. It's a very beautiful movie which is basically dealing with the flood situation that happened in Kerala in 2018. Just an example. Kerala is supposed to be a very nature-rich region. Lot of flora and fauna. That is plants, animals, biodiversity, all this. Somehow the floods affected the region because the balance there was tilted. We have something called the Kasturi Rangan Committee on the Western Ghats. You will read about it in environment. I'm just giving you a context. We are talking about an officer or a expert panel on how to handle the ecology of that region. There is another panel called the Madhav Gadgil panel, which recommended how to conserve the ecology of that region without disturbing. Otherwise, there will be ripple effects. It's not just about environment. It is about human beings, livelihoods, policies, money. With one flood, which can happen in just a few hours, nature is so powerful that it can wipe out an entire generation's wealth. Just like that. And you need to understand any policy decisions that you're taking. You are a decision maker. You are not a robot that mucks up information. You are a thinking human being. You are applying for a job that requires you to make decisions. It doesn't matter if you don't remember something. But what is a bigger problem is if you can't develop a methodology to arrive at a solution. What UPSC expects from you is that ability to think faster. And newspapers are just a tool to organize that information on a daily basis. When you look at a piece of information, you need to inherently develop the ability to master how we read those newspapers. Okay. So we will look at some newspaper articles and I'll tell you how to utilize newspapers. Quick recap. Why do we read newspapers? To develop a methodology for thinking and linking it with static. Why? Because it is a practice session for us to organize our thoughts in tandem with the syllabus. What is the bonus? You will get updated information. It's just a bonus. Can you remember everything? No. But you will definitely remember the core philosophy of that article, what it is trying to say. You all have newspapers. Some of you have newspapers. Those who don't have the newspaper, that's fine. Take a look at this article today. Steering the decarbonization of India's logistics sector. Now, when you're beginning your preparation, what is it that you will do? What is note making according to you? You will first condense whatever is there. You will note down the keywords, store that, write it in a book, feel happy that you have made notes. You do it every single day for a month and leave it there. You'll never touch it because it's so bulky. That's not how you prepare current affairs. Thought process. And this is where you have to start from your concepts. If you read or if you start your environment classes, you will notice the context of this word decarbonization. Take any textbook, any reference guide. You will notice that there is a chapter called climate change. Okay. So GS3, environment, climate change. But we are talking about logistics sector. Where will you find this logistics sector? Economy. So you are saying on one hand, you are saying it is about environment, and then we are talking about economy. Is this about economy or environment? Both. That's all? Or do you think there are repercussions? What other subjects can you think in this article? I'm not even showing you the article. I'm talking about economy. I'm talking about environment. What other areas of the syllabus can you link this to? Geography, excellent. Why geography? Climate. We are already discussing the climate problem in environment. Geography, regional planning. What if you have all the ports in one state? Do you expect the rest of the country from northeast to Mumbai? You need an equitable regional planning. In the absence of an equitable regional planning, I'm linking now to GS1. What happens? Regionalism. What do you mean by regionalism? Guess. Just guess. Regionalism. Ism means an ideology. Your sense of identity is attached to a region. Okay. In the absence of an economic opportunity, you feel deprived. Your culture starts deteriorating. You are made to feel inferior. And if that continues for a very long time, a resentment builds up. That resentment will cause disharmony in the society, disturbance in the society. And the very idea of India as an integral nation which encompasses multiple identities becomes a threat. When you don't handle regionalism properly, it will turn into secessionism. What do you mean by that? Separate country. You will notice that the Northeast has separate provisions in this constitution. Special provisions. Article 371. Why? Because of this very reason. Regionalism. We started at environment, ended up at society. And you can link this to ethics also. Can you tell me what ethics can you think about? Values. Concern for human dignity. And environmental values. Environmental conservation. A single article can make you travel in different worlds just like that. And you develop this intuition on a daily basis. Initially, you may not have a structure, but at least develop the ability to think why we are studying this, what will happen if we don't. This methodology is called the Socratic method, the dialectical method. You know Socrates? Ever heard about him? What I'm essentially doing right from the word go in this class, asking why, I'm just copying Socrates' method. Because it is the most effective way. If you understand something, the effort it takes to remember something is very low. Isn't it? Now, the next time when you start reading the preamble and you are supposed to recollect the adjectives of our constitution, you don't have to think twice which is the first word. What you understand, you don't memorize. First understand, ask the why. The what will take care of itself. And this is how you should prepare for this exam. If you chase information mindlessly without understanding the context, you're bound to suffer. Okay. Now, with this context, let's have a look at some of the articles, how we can use that in the exam. Steering the decarbonization agenda. Someone told me that decarbonization is about reducing carbon emissions. Why only carbon? Why not oxygen? Can we go for deoxygenization of logistics sector? Why not? Okay. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. How many of you know, or how many of you don't know what a greenhouse gas is? What is a greenhouse? A house where green paint is painted? What is a greenhouse? Which traps heat. So artificially, let's say on a piece of agricultural land, you construct a small place, put lights, give water, everything. It traps the heat without escaping, and that heat is used for growing the plants in an artificial condition. But if that heat is beyond a limit, the very plants it is supposed to help, it will destroy them. And if this happens at a global level, that effect is called global warming or the greenhouse gas effect. Okay. One such gas is carbon dioxide. Why carbon dioxide? What is so special about Earth that we don't have things elsewhere? One is oxygen. And the second thing is life form. What is so special about Earth that life became possible here? Because of the existence of organic compounds. What do you mean by organic compounds? Organic chemistry. Anyone from the science background? I'm not asking you any formula, don't worry. How many of you are from science background? Engineering, MSc? Which branch? Or MSc Mathematics? You must have heard organic chemistry somewhere. How many of you are from non-science background? Non-science, okay. Which subjects? Which degree? BA. But you must know organic chemistry. So, organic chemistry is essentially about organic compounds, carbon, hydrogen. If you take a look at physical geography textbook of NCERT, chapter 2, there is a small table, elements of Earth's crust. You will see that, there is oxygen, silicon, aluminium, iron, etc., etc. Take a look at the environment chapter. You will see our air is filled with nitrogen. It's filled with nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc. But even though the percentage of carbon dioxide is very minute, that percentage is increasing because Earth as a system will have an ability to capture the excess carbon dioxide either through oceans or through trees or even farmlands sometimes. But farmlands will release carbon dioxide also. Sorry, greenhouse gases also. So we have when Earth as a natural system, you're releasing something, it also has the ability to absorb. But you got to give it time. It's like a pressure cooker. If you want to cook food, you need to at least give it some time for the whistles to blow off that steam and let the food be cooked. If you don't give it time, what will you get? Raw food, uncooked food. Similarly, you need to give enough time for Earth to cope with the stress that we as human beings are putting on it. And if you don't, Earth will react. The extreme weather events, whether it is the floods, whether it is the rainfall, droughts, you are witnessing greening of the Arctic region. Plants are growing in the Arctic region. And hitherto, which were very fertile regions, they are witnessing droughts. Why? Because Earth is trying to cope. It's trying to warn us. The business as usual approach is no longer going to work. The future generations are going to suffer. And it's not ethical on our part to let that happen. It is in this context you will be able to appreciate this article better. If you are unable to recollect all this background just by looking at the word decarbonization, your preparation is yet to begin. You will not find the meaning of the word decarbonization here. You will find it in the static. So when she said that we have to link the current affairs to the static, the concepts do not change. The problem that we are trying to solve, first of all, the problem that we are trying to understand, and then we are picking up various newspapers, articles, no matter where you read it from. If it is a logical answer which is pragmatic, that should be there in your answers. You're not reading articles to condense them and make them feel like notes. You're bringing articles from various sources to solve the problems of this country. So that point, if you forget, information is not going to save you. Understanding the problem statement in its entirety, having a proper structure, and then a solution for it, no matter how many years of newspaper. In the end, how many points are you supposed to write? 150 words, 250 words. And those 150 and 250 words should capture the essence of that problem statement and the solution completely. And if that's not the case, your answer is half-baked. Of what use is all this newspaper reading if you can't produce a 250-word answer? If you can't capture the essence of the problem and give it solution, which is pragmatic. Right? So when we talk about decarbonization of logistics sector, what is the first question that you should ask? Can you tell me, why are we trying to decarbonize logistics sector? Because it is contributing to carbon emissions. What are the various sources of carbon emissions? Don't you think this is the first question we should ask? How much? See, if you say we want to decarbonize everything, do you think one solution for all the problems will work? Can you apply decarbonization needs logic of logistics sector to agriculture sector? The problems of that sector are different. So the solution is obviously going to be different. So let's say if you think this is 100% of the problem, okay, this box represents the need for decarbonizing. Let's say a part of this is agriculture, a part of this is logistics sector, a part of this is power sector, a part of this is industries or construction activities, indoor activities. For each of this sector, the strategy is different, and together this box will combine the strategy that India should follow for the decarbonization of the entire economy. Why is this theme of decarbonization important now? Because if we don't act now, there is no future for us. That is why we have a strategy called the net zero by 2070. Net zero. What does it mean? Whatever we are releasing into the environment, we need to capture it back. Or our economic activities should be designed in such a way that whatever we are releasing, there is a net addition also. Whether you are planting trees, I'm just giving a very oversimplified scenario. You plant trees. If you are burning coal for producing thermal electricity, thermal based electricity, you need to plant trees to capture that greenhouse gases, and the net effect is zero. I'm just giving an oversimplified solution. This is not how it works in reality, just for you to introduce you to the concept. With this understanding, if you read any article, the theme here becomes decarbonization of the entire economy. And if you are making notes, you should make on the theme of decarbonization, not decarbonization of logistics sector. You make a heading decarbonization. You say, what is the problem statement? We have to decarbonize our economy. Where? Various sectors, power sector, logistics sector, agriculture, etc., etc. In that one of the point, logistics sector, this article pertains to that. Clear? Are you with me? How many of you had a very good breakfast? Feeling energetic? Either you are feeling very energetic or very lazy, or too tired because you didn't have a breakfast. Okay. Just a small health tip. Free advice, Mufti Gyan, whatever you can consider. Do not have oily breakfast. It starts your day with lethargy. You'll become very lazy. Experience speaking. Give up eating puris, Mysore bhajis in the morning. I know. How many of you are from Ashok Nagar? You stay in hostels? How many of you? How many of you are coming from home? Avoid, the tasty Mysore bhajis in the morning. Maybe after the class you can have if you are craving for something. But always have healthier breakfast. Probably idli or something. Now that you understood the context of decarbonization and the logistics sector, now we'll move to the second aspect, logistics sector. Why do we have what is logistics? Transportation of what? Goods. Why do we have to transport goods? To facilitate consumption to the entire economy. Why is it that this becomes a necessity? Can you link it with geography and tell me? Exactly. Not every region has economic resources in the same way. You will not get a specific quality of goods in a certain region, but there is demand for it, and you will transport it. The transportation is a prerequisite for consumption. If you don't see, if you ordered, let's put it in a simple way. You ordered something from China. How does it magically end up at your home? Amazon, Alibaba, etc., etc. Some importer ships it. Some guy, brings a huge lorry of truck and put it in a warehouse, and from there is a smaller van that comes to the local hub. From there, one guy picks up the articles on his bike, comes to you, you try that, and you decide, no, this is not good, let's send it back. And it can be as simple as a socks. One pair of socks came to you from China and you decide you don't want to do it. Return. Why? Because Amazon has a free return policy. Even worse, you want to use it for a couple of days and then give it back. ఉతక్కని కూడా ఉతకరు కొంతమంది. So here you have a question of ethics. You have a question of sustainability. You have a question of environment. You have a question of economy, regional growth, jobs, gig economy. Gig economy and delivery boys. Single issue is a doorway for multiple problems. And when they say, you must have heard this advice, our main answers should be multi-dimensional. What do you mean by multi-dimensional? This point. But is every question multi-dimensional? Adigitene rayali. So a lot of UPSC aspirants will have this attitude that, I will write what I know. Take whatever you want. And they say that we have done very well, so I don't know, UPSC does not know how to evaluate. So when you look at this answer, you watch movies, right? How many of you are movie lovers? And how many of you are on Instagram? Very studious. I don't think so. How is it possible that your guys are not on Instagram? I'm not going to ask any questions, but I'm sure your day starts with some memes. Most of you. If that's not the case, great. You're not wasting your time. But for those who do, people like me, I'm just giving you an example. When you're evaluating your answers, when you look at some answers, I am reminded of that dialogue from Pokiri. Aliyad. The points that you write are so out of context. They're not wrong. The question is wrong for that answer. You should not be that person. So be very specific. When you're learning, you are thinking in multiple perspectives, but the skill of preparation is relevant because you are writing the answer only for that context. Your knowledge is not what you should apply there. Your wisdom is what you should apply. Demand of the question. So logistics sector is not just about economy. It's a prerequisite for consumption, yes, but it has repercussions on geography, people, environment, etc., etc. And when you're designing a policy, when you're understanding the issue, you should understand it holistically from all these perspectives. But when an article is written, you cannot write a book every single time that you have an article. So the article writer is writing only in one dimension, linking logistics sector, the economic activity, to the environment. There can be another article on how to make logistics sector efficient, how to produce more jobs, what are the lacunae or the gaps in the logistics sector. So you have two issues here, logistics sector and decarbonization. Under the notes that you make on decarbonization, logistics sector can be 1 point. Under the logistics sector notes, the decarbonization agenda can be 1 point. So you are making two different notes, two different problem statements, and the interconnection is this link between environment and economy. And this template that economy should be linked to environment is true for any topic that you read. And this is how you should prepare your notes. Okay, now let's look at the article. Now that you understand all this article, the context of this article, everything feels very easy. See, what is the central problem that we are discussing here? Let's look at the logistics sector. And I'm taking points not just from this article, but the whole logistics sector. One of the most carbon intensive sectors in the world because we are inefficient. Logistics include transport, warehousing, supply chains. Transport, is there anything that I should explain here? You all understood this point. And then it contributes to 13.5% of India's greenhouse gas emissions. Where did I take this statistic from? In that second paragraph, if you are reading the newspaper editorial, look at that second or third paragraph. Third paragraph, 13.5%. I took it from that article. Does that article mention a source? What is the source? IEA. What does it stand for? What is its role? Can anyone guess? This can be a prelims question, right? Why do we have International Energy Agency? When you ask the why, the preparation becomes very interesting, isn't it? Okay, if you are not able to guess, look at the statistics. The very reason why IEA came up with the statistics will tell you something about the nature of its work. Did you get me? The fact that IEA gave you some statistics will tell you one of the aspects of its work. What is the one of the aspect? The fact that they will conduct a research on the global trends of energy needs in various sectors. That can be one of the job. Now the question that you need to ask is there any other organization in the world that does this work? If yes, why is there an overlap? Is there an organization in our own country to track where these energy needs are mapped to? You get my point? This is how you are supposed to read newspapers. The why. Curiosity. This number you may forget. But the fact that you can go to IEA, search for the statistics, update it just before your exam is good enough for you. You don't have to remember this number right from day one. But you need to know the strategy. Once you prepare this strategy of decarbonization for this country, you can just about fill the gaps. The skeleton is ready now. The gaps can be filled anytime. And once you prepare that through newspaper, you are good to go. You just need to revise. The logic cannot be forgotten when you study like a story. Till now, everything is making sense because you are trying to understand it. I'm going slow because this is the first class. Till now, did you feel the necessity for remembering something? Whatever we discussed, the concepts. You don't have to remember anything till now because we all have the basic common sense. We are deploying our common sense to understand this. Okay. So, we have a statistic, we have an agency. While you are reading for the newspaper article, you will question this. What is the job of IEA? A simple Google search will help you to land up on that website. You go to the About Us section. It will have a very complicated language. Search and translate that in your own words. What is its main job? What is it trying to do? If you understand that, you will have one context lying somewhere in your mind. You don't have to remember it. Come back to the article. Road transport is the biggest offender because 88% of the emissions are coming from the transport sector. In the transport sector through roadways. So what is the inference? CSAT. If you go to the paper 2, reading comprehension, while reading the editorial, you will also notice inference. When I say that road transport is the biggest offender and 88% of the emissions in transport sector coming from roadways, what is the inference? We need to move out of that and look for an alternative solution. Isn't it? It's only logical that if this is the offender, I need to stop that. This is the kind of questions you will get in CSAT, in reading comprehension. This is how editorials will help you while you're reading articles. Now, if we try to think of a solution and use this article and fit it in our own framework, you need to have the ability to first understand the problem, and then you yourself, using your common sense, should reverse engineer the problem and see how this article solution will fit into that framework. So if you reverse engineer, you will see that our goal is to go for green logistics. What do you mean by green logistics? Is it green color vans? No. A logistics sector which is functioning by reducing the carbon footprint. That is the amount of carbon emissions or the resources it is taking and the emissions that it is giving. We are reducing that. What does it require? Less carbon per unit of goods transported. Let's say if the pair of socks that you ordered from Amazon is coming to you at X units, if you can reduce it by 30%, it is coming to you with only 0.7x. We are at least moving in the direction. Efficient energy use in transport plus warehousing. Wherever there is energy use, let's say for example this power cut. The reason why I asked you guys to come forward is because you will be getting an AC into this. You don't have to switch other ACs on. The fans there are on. The lights there are on. We're all in a way making it inefficient. Because if we don't do that, people might think like the room is getting a bit darker, so it's not helping us. Again, the choice to come forward will decide whether we have to spend more energy or less energy. It is very much within our own control, and that aspect is something that we discuss in ethics. So, energy efficient. When efficient energy is produced through innovation, science and tech, GS3, science and tech. So, this will tell you what is the perspective with which we prepare science and tech. What is the perspective? Can you guess? We are saying that we need this, and for that we are using science and technology. The angle in which you should look at general studies, science and technology is science and tech is a solution for the problems that are existing in our society, and we will be aware of the science and tech syllabus through the lens of this practical needs. It doesn't matter if you're from a non-science background or whether you're from a science background. It really doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is you have understood the principles of science, the practical necessity of science and technology in the syllabus, in the context of the syllabus. We are trying to solve the problems by better innovation. And that is why we need more expenditure in science and technology. R&D expenditure, research, development. Okay. We need to increase the capital allocation to R&D. That's what we say, right? Mode of transport, fuel type, distance, energy efficiency. These are the factors through which you will reduce. Where all can you reduce the carbon footprint? These are the mode of transport. Move away from roadways. Use the railways. Use waterways that are much more energy efficient. Instead of bringing 2 trucks load it in a huge ship and bring it to us. It's much more efficient. Fuel type. Instead of using a diesel, what if the local delivery boys use e-vehicles, which is powered by a solar battery or solar panel, not battery. Okay. The distance. How should we plan our warehouses? See, if you are putting a warehouse away from city and you are expecting all the delivery boys to pick it up from there, imagine the number of vehicles that you would need. So bad planning can also affect. And finally, energy efficiency. See, we need better mileage. Indian markets are very sensitive to this mileage aspect. Only when the economy is growing, people are not so, interested in the mileage aspect. A simple case to the point, just observe. The number of people who are buying this expensive bikes like Harley Davidson or even to that matter, a few years ago, Royal Enfield was very expensive for a lot of people, and people did not want to buy it because it does not give you mileage, etc. But that number has changed drastically. Gen Z. You know what is Gen Z? Anyone who never heard this term called Gen Z? If we look at the existing population of this country, it's a common sociological term. Sociology, you can say. They divided various generations. Gen Z, or the population that was born from 97 or 96, 97 till 2010. That crowd is called the Gen Z crowd. And when you're reading the concepts of economy, you will learn that there is a term called GDP, which is nothing but a metric of economic growth. And if you take a look at that formula, C plus I plus G plus X minus M, the C is nothing but the consumption that you were talking about. Logistics is a prerequisite for consumption. And the characteristic attribute of Gen Z is that they have conspicuous consumption, they have more disposable incomes, they are willing to spend more. Generations before that were conservative, they tried to save more. The generations after that, they feel that you only get to live once, so let's spend, let's splurge. But they're also saving, but in a different way, because they have additional incomes. Indian economy is growing, but that is only a small percentage of the population. We still have a significant chunk of population which is yet to arrive at this stage. And when they do, think about the environment. If just 5 to 10% of India's population is ordering socks from China, and we are contributing to 13.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions through logistics, imagine if that number reaches 70-80%. Job description of the delivery boy is to bring you socks and take it back. Not a happy place to be in. So, science and technology is also linked to the kind of opportunities that the next generations will have. It's linked to human thought, evolution, your ethics, everything is interlinked. Okay. Now, India's logic. So, let's see. With this context, you understood the overall philosophy of the article. Whatever discussion we took till now, the reason why it took so much time is because, one, you guys do not have a context of environment, economy, sociology, social issues, society, ethics, etc., etc. So I'm just giving a brief background of all these points. The minute you read the headline of this article, all these points should appear in a structure. And it's not going to happen in a day or two. It is going to take some time. And you continuously read newspapers. In the initial days, it will take more than 1 hour. But the way you are reading that newspaper and how you are investing that 1 hour will probably make the entire difference. Okay. So, the prerequisite for knowing how to read newspapers is mastering, if I say mastering, at least by hearting the syllabus of the 4 papers in that very specific order. The minute a keyword appears in the newspaper, you should be able to map it to the syllabus point. And this structured thinking is what sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. The ability to retrieve that in the fastest possible way, reducing your reaction time and training for that on a daily basis and writing that under 7 minutes is what this exam is all about. So what is preparation? It's not reading more. It's about training more to do all these activities under a time constraint. Did you get the objective? So I'm giving you a question which is designed out of this article. So the scope of this question is only confined to this article. Discuss the challenges and opportunities. Challenges and opportunities in decarbonizing India's transport and logistics sector. The keyword here is discuss, meaning you have to show both the sides. Challenges, because we are moving away from a status quo situation, as in how our society is existing right now, how our economy is existing right now, to a newer dimension, a newer business model. Otherwise, it's not possible for us to decarbonize. So it has certain challenges. And since we are moving away from something old to something new, it also provides an opportunity. Every crisis also gives us an opportunity to be better. And this is the go-getter attitude. That is, I am here to solve problems. Yes, there are challenges that are existing, but I need to get the job done. And this is the kind of attitude expected from bureaucrats, aspiring bureaucrats like you. Clear? So this question is an opportunity to see that aspiration in you. Are you having that passion to really look at the problem and the opportunities? How will I know that? By the facts that you are presenting, by the substantiation you are having, and the context that you are setting. See the context. India's logistics sector contributes to so and so number of the country's GHGs, and I'm giving you the source because I can change this number and write whatever number I want. And people think it's okay. No, it is not. The people who are correcting your papers, they're not, kids. They have the experience, collective experience of probably 3 or 4 people together, their age. If you're 20, 25, they might be 55. So don't try to fool them. You can't. 88% of this. Okay. So you set the context. Now that you have a context, in the body of the answer, you need to give, I'm just giving side headings like this so that you will understand. What are the challenges? High dependence on fossil fuels, fragmented infrastructure. What do you mean by fragmented infrastructure? There is no connection from one place to another place. One part you have railway station. From railway station you need to have an immediate connection to the roadway. Or you need to have a simple, workflow. That simple workflow is absent because of the fragmented infrastructure. And then warehousing energy use. When you are putting things in a warehouse, what is happening? You are cooling it, you are storing it in a certain condition, and the electricity needs for that are again not from solar or anything, they are from coal. You are burning coal. So it is inefficient. Inefficient in the terms of environment. And then aviation sector complexity, for example. When you are using airways to transport cargo, sometimes it is not cheap, sometimes it is dynamic pricing is involved. So this makes it very less desirable for the logistic companies. And if they want to go for railways, you know how slow our goods trains are. And we can't blame the railways either, because if passenger trains are late, We are not going to, that becomes a huge political headache also for them. So we need to fix all these issues at once, not one by one. So the existence of various ministries and the need for coordination requires them to work together. And that's why you have portals like the Gati Shakti Master Plan. Like, it's one of the initiative of the government of India, which requires us to stop this duplication of effort. I'll just give you an example. A few days ago, there was a road that was dug up by HMWS and SB, that is water board of sewerage board of Hyderabad, because they were laying a pipeline. They covered it up and a road was laid. A few days later, the road was dug up again, this time by another department, because some electric cables or some underground cables or something, there was a problem. There was a drainage problem or something. They could have planned it better, right? If both of them were digging up together, both the jobs can be done together. The economic cost, the environmental cost, all of them can be factored in, and it would have been much more efficient. Just because of the lack of coordination, just because there was no information, because it's so complex, the governance is so complex that coordination becomes difficult. And for this practical reason, you need to have an interministerial coordination framework. You at least need to have an idea on how things should function. Right? So, that is the complexity that we're talking about. Now, what are the solutions that we need to think? When you're giving solutions in your answers, you need to give why you think that is a solution, the justification part, which you will find in your newspapers, and also substantiation. The logic plus an example, either through a fact or through a statistic, you need to be able to give there. Okay. So the first solution that we are proposing is shift to rail freight. What is the justification? Rail emits 80% less CO2 per ton. We are giving that. What is a fact to support? China is already doing that, so we should also do it. India's share is much less when compared to China. We have to learn from China. So by communicating these points, you are showing that one, you are aware of India's scenario, you are also aware of the global scenario, and you are trying to bring a solution which is practical. Okay? This makes your answer look very good. The difference between a generic answer and a topper answer is this justification and substantiation. Everybody says that we have to move away from roads. It's common sense. We have to pick up railways. Why should I go for railways? This justification is absent in answers. They just write one point, shift to rail freight. Over. They'll go to the next point. See, you're also giving some example in India. You can pick either of them. Promote inland waterways and coastal shipping. Why? Justification. 3x more energy efficient. Fact. Why? International Maritime Organization. Is it Indian Maritime Organization or International Maritime Organization? IMO stands for? Right. There are some protocols by which IMO is trying to do that. When India is signing up and saying that, okay, I will also participate in your agenda, we have some commitment because we made some promise to someone. So we will also have to restructure our economy to suit this global needs. And if all the countries do that, we will be saving the earth. So this micro level actions will add up right from panchayat level to the global level. We'll keep the earth safe. So green fuels in freight transport, LNG, biofuels and hydrogen cut tailpipe emissions. All these facts that are there in your newspapers. Justification, fact. I'm not teaching you the concept. I'm teaching you how to learn in the first class. Okay. And last point, we're saying decarbonize warehousing. You have a justification, solution and an example. This is how you read a newspaper article. This is yesterday's newspaper article. I'll just give you a quick background. When you read this, B2G technology, India's power sector. This is the heading. When you're reading this heading, automatically you should understand how this power sector is relevant in this situation. And when you do that, you will understand what are the various challenges that the power sector of this country is facing. Firstly, peak time electricity demand. During nights, you can't expect a solar panel to give you power because we can't store power yet. We do not have batteries to store the electricity generated at scale. We have smaller batteries, but not batteries big enough to supply power to the entire country. So energy storage and distribution is a problem, a technological problem for which we don't have a solution yet at scale. At a smaller level, yes. At a larger level, no. Surge in electric vehicle adoption, creating load imbalances. In the context of this article, it's not for the entire power sector alone. In the context of this article, when you are having more and more number of e-vehicles, obviously they'll need power. Why are we going towards e-vehicles? Because India, 85% of the fuel that India imports will have effect on our exchequer. That is, we have to pay out of our pockets, and the price fluctuations when you are importing will make the petrol and diesel that we get expensive or cheaper. Never cheaper, usually expensive only. Even if it is cheaper, the prices will remain stable. Because the economic certainty, like if you fluctuate the prices more, it will become difficult for the consumers. Right. So, to reduce that dependency, we are coming towards battery vehicles. And if these batteries are again powered by coal power or burning any natural oil or natural gas or something, what's the point? It's counterproductive. Essentially, they should be powered through cleaner fuels, solar, wind, hybrid, etc., etc. The good point is these batteries can store power. And it's not like you use cars all the time. What if I can use the power that is present in that battery and connect it back to the grid and give it to someone who is in need of that power during the nights? This is the technology that we're talking about, V2G technology, so vehicle to grid. See this. When you get power from the grid and from there to the V2G unit, you charge it and then you give it back. If you're not using the power there, you give it back and then you connect it back to the grid. The grid will give it to someone else who is in need of that power. Why are we doing this? Because at this point of time, we do not have a solution to store battery power. I mean, there is no huge, big battery which can solve the problem of this entire country to supply renewable energy, cleaner fuels. To solve that problem, we are using this technology. So look at science and technology articles as solutions for certain problems. Okay? The minute you are able to do that, you will find even science and tech based questions very easy. The V2G technology is meant to solve what problem? Can you tell me? Vehicle to grid technology is solving a problem. What is that problem? Giving power back to the grid during the times where solar energy is not able to meet the peak demand. Why? Because batteries have this, e-vehicles have these batteries which are lying unused. Brilliant solution, right? Do you see any problems here? Any problems? Adaptability is a problem. Why do you think adaptability is a problem? Firstly, where will you get this V2G unit? Is it coming free of cost? Secondly, at this point of time, do you really think our existing infrastructure is suiting this? You are getting power from grid to homes. Can you, at this point of time, go to your home and send power to your grid? Do you have the technology yet? How much will it cost? Technologically viable. The second question a policymaker should ask is it economically feasible? Do you think it's feasible at this point of time? Thirdly, even if it's feasible, what is the biggest problem for e-vehicle adoption? Batteries. Batteries are expensive. Let's say if Tata Nexon is costing you around 15 lakhs, an e-vehicle will cost almost 5 to 6 lakhs more, 20-25 lakhs. Why? Because the cost of battery. So the biggest argument against e-vehicles is that I am paying an upfront cost. At least in the case of petrol, I can pay it in installments. But for e-vehicles, unless you are driving like 1 lakh kilometers in 5 years, it just doesn't make any sense for you to invest. And therefore, a lot of people are against buying e-vehicles. Why? Because after the battery is worn out, you will have to buy a new battery which will cost 5 or 6 lakhs more. Eventually, it is much more expensive for the consumer. And now you are saying that I will continuously charge and discharge your battery, and whatever price that you were thinking will last for 5 years, it can happen in 2.5 years. The battery will die and we don't have a policy to replace it. I'll give you nominal cost. You deal with that headache. Do you think a consumer will accept this? So, the policy should have a clear-cut guidelines. What is a policy document? A document which has a set of problems and its corresponding solutions. At this point of time, we don't have that policy document to adopt this technology, which makes it very difficult to use. Clear? Do you think both these articles are related? Yesterday and today in some way? Can I say I want to deploy V2G technology? So if I'm writing an answer in a futuristic world, in an agenda for decarbonization, I will say that we will try to deploy V2G technology for connecting renewable power back to the grid and address the problem of load factor with due policy incentives designed and a clear-cut policy execution. This can be a point in your answer. This entire article can be at max 1 point or at max be a question in your prelims. And for that, if you condense the whole article and make a bulky note, do you think you will be able to use it? No, that's not how you use newspaper articles. That's the reason I'm talking about this. So today, you understood the methodology of reading newspapers, how to link it to different aspects of the syllabus. In the initial days, it is going to be slower, but you need to be extremely patient. Okay? Clear? We will look at some more articles like this. You know this Waqf Act. Now we are slightly moving away from economy and environment and we are venturing into the legal, constitutional and policy matters. Waqf Act. This is in news. Any idea what this is all about? What is a Waqf? Sorry? Okay. Muslim lands. Okay, fine. Let's see. Waqf refers to a permanent. What are the keywords? Remember, permanent dedication of a property by ever. Who is giving it? Muslim. For what purposes? Benefit the community, for building mosques, schools, basically charity. So some rich person wants to give it back to the community, so they are giving those lands for the welfare of that community. The problem here is there are allegations of corruption, nepotism. You know what is nepotism? Same family trying to control the properties, which is supposed to be for community use, but they're rather used for personal gains. These are some allegations. And whenever this kind of allegations happen, who should intervene? The state. So, the purpose, according to the government, of introducing this Waqf Act or the amendment of the Waqf Act is to address this problem of corruption and nepotism. How does it do that? So, the government wants to position this as a secular reform. What do you mean by secular reform? It is not separation of the state from religion. In Indian context, that is not the definition of secularism. Indian secularism is equal intervention in all the religions for safeguarding them. Okay. The concept of Indian secularism is encapsulated in the term Sarva Dharma Samabhava. Sarva Dharma Samabhava. What does it mean? Treating all religions equally. And that doesn't mean putting them away by including them. Why is Indian secularism like this? Because religion is central to Indian way of life. And the diversity of this country will necessitate that the state will try to bring that diversity. Okay. So, but the conflict here is that there are something called the fundamental rights. Can you tell me what is the meaning of a fundamental right? Okay, I'll ask a different question. Why is fundamental right called fundamental? Basic laws for a citizen. Or is it basic rights for a citizen? What is a right? Rights are claims from citizens to why? The activities of others will not affect us. In simple way, fundamental rights are called fundamental because without those basic rights, what constitutes the identity of human beings is taken away. We are adjusting that concept of fundamental rights to suit Indian context, and that's why we have one of the fundamental right of religious freedom given in articles 25 and 26 of the Indian Constitution. So when the state tries to intervene, is it a violation of this fundamental right for religious freedom? If it is a violation, how do we best address this corruption, nepotism, irregularities in lands? Let's say if there is a possibility that a certain Waqf land is continuously used by the same generations for their own purpose and they're maintaining a dominance because there is no state to ask the question, how do we reform this? And it's true for every religion, not just one religion. So either ensure a uniformity of standards so that every religious community is taking care. You have to empower every religious community in such a way that some dominant people in that community do not rule over the rest or directly intervene in that religious affairs, which can cause a conflict. So there is a dialogue between the Supreme Court and the executive, that is the parliament, on how to go about this issue. Parliament took one action. Supreme Court asked some questions because Supreme Court is the protector of the values given in the Constitution. And a dialogue between these two will give us a solution. So what did Supreme Court ask? It asked some questions. What are the observations made by Supreme Court? Can non-Muslims be a part of the Waqf board that manage the properties? Why is Supreme Court asking that? Because Supreme Court's job is not to make laws. It is just to test the constitutionality. Why is it like this? The very design of Constitution says separation of powers, checks and balances. So each of them are like checks and balances on each other. Judiciary will act as a check on executive and vice versa. So in this context, Supreme Court asked. They asked, will it dilute religious autonomy? There is another concept in the Waqf Act called the Waqf by user, meaning you need not have property documents. If it is declared as Waqf and it is continuing as such for many years. Now, by suddenly changing the definition, you are bringing that property to litigation. Do you know the 264th Law Commission report says that it will take roughly around 400 years to finish the pending cases that are languishing in courts with the present strength of judiciary. And this was way back in 2009, if I'm not wrong. 2009 or 10, maybe, somewhere around that time. National Judicial Data Grid. That is one more source where you will find the number of pending cases. Anywhere between 2 to 4 crores. The number keeps on changing depending on the year that you are looking at. Now, with this kind of litigations, the number is only going to increase. Do you think it's practical to address them? Do you think it will be a peaceful negotiation? Therefore, Supreme Court wanted to have some clarity on what the executive is thinking. And if the executive refuses to answer that, the court will say, this is unconstitutional. So, there is another article in Indian Express on the same thing, how there is a delicate balance between this. So, what happens when Supreme Court asks questions like this? The executive will have two choices. One, either defend the law in the courts and say, hey, this is my justification for this, and it is very much within the limits of the constitutional values, so you cannot say this is unconstitutional. Or two, preemptively amend it, withdraw or pause the law to avoid completely unfavorable verdict. Usually, in the past few years, according to the article writer, when we have enough evidences for the same, the executive is taking the second route. They're just pausing there. Why? Because you remember this famous case called the Keshavananda Bharati case? Heard about it? And it gave rise to one concept called basic structure doctrine. And that became a point of reference for all the future cases also. So, if we open a Pandora's box like this, if the government opens this, it will block or create a legislative hurdle for many future cases also. It will delay the reforms. So, the government just stays inactive on it. Preemptive delay. Or they just pause and put it in the freezer. And when the time is ripe for the society to accept it, they will bring it back. And that is the same logic why Uniform Civil Code, Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, which is there in the Directive Principles of State Policy, that is a part of DPSP. not fundamental rights. Because the society should accept those reforms. It is a wish list. I wish this happens. But how it happens is decided by that particular society in that time period. Is this the best way to solve the problem of corruption and nepotism? Maybe, maybe not. Indirectly, by putting a certain party in power, we are saying that, okay, we think this is the good thing. So, the quality of democracy depends on the awareness of the people, the level of awareness of the people. So, that's why we need a participative democracy. There should be some sense of collective responsibility from the citizens towards the government. And those qualities should be reflecting in your answer. That makes it a better argument. Clear? So, articles like this will tell you instances when there is a question on judiciary and executive. This whole Waqf Act and the Supreme Court observation will become a single point to say that the government is probably taking the second route of preempting the judicial scrutiny. And there are various other cases like this, whether it is the sedition law case or the Article 370 case. You quote various case laws and say this is how the issue is panning out. And therefore, we'll make a conclusion saying that preempting judicial verdicts may be good for de-escalating the tensions. But there is a very important, which is a nice line from that article. In a complex democracy, executive recalibration may sometimes be the price for institutional balance. A very balanced way of picking up articles, picking up sentences from the articles and using in our answers. Okay. So, newspaper articles can be used like this for your training of mind, for your CSAT, for your curiosity, for picking up good lines, statistics, etc., etc. But the way you organize that notes is efficient only when you have a structured thinking. Clear? I hope you enjoyed this class.